Like I said, as a monk, I was born in Thailand, that's why I ordained, but still only grew up in Australia, where I spent 8 years with Ajahn Brahm training at Bodhinyana Monastery, and been away for the last year and a half in Wat Buddha Dhamma, just practicing over there, but also trying to re-establish the center as a forest monastery. And I'd like to share some of my experiences and just some of my reflections about what happened in the last year and a half. And first, just say, like I said, it's great to be back and to finally see Jhana Grove finished. I was here a year and a half ago and it was partially done, and now to see the beautiful hall, the cottage, it's amazingly big, very luxurious. I hope many people will experience much peace and tranquility and wisdom practicing in the center. And also appreciate, it's only after I'm a senior monk at Wat Buddha Dhamma to appreciate all the hard work that many people put into, getting a place going, especially Ajahn Brahm, to get anything started. It's a huge amount of work. And now that I'm doing some maintenance work, you appreciate every little thing you see in front of you. That someone had to, come out, cut the piece of wood, they have to varnish it, refine it, and then put it here for the monks to use. So the fact that, like I said, so doing that just gives me a new appreciation for walking into Dhamma hall, looking around at the Bodhinyana Monastery, to appreciate how much hard work that's gone into building anything, and to bring that up to make sure that I use it for its purpose of achieving much peace, working on the wisdom faculty, and for the welfare and happiness of all beings. So it is, just to mention that was really nice. But also, being a senior monk, not only appreciating what's hard work, how much work is gone ahead, and that also kind of reflecting as a monk, you are dependent on so many people, and the goodness of people come. Obviously, the hard work of the different monks who come ahead of you, and also the support of the lay people who come to offer us things. That you always keep that in mind, that we are basically at heart mendicant, beggars, and and that it brings to mind a sense of appreciation. Because when you appreciate something, you reflect that the positive things, what you already have. Appreciation leads naturally to contentment, which is leads to stillness and peace. When you're happy with somebody, you look at the good side, you appreciate them. You don't look at their faults. You don't say, so-and-so's okay, but, he's doing this wrong. Appreciation just leads to bright states of mind and to contentment. And contentment is a great thing because it cuts away a lot of the work that comes into a fault-finding mind. Because, if you're not happy, then you have to do things. You have to change things. You're happy with your husband, then it's great. You don't have to do anything. But you're not, then you have to start out by, trying to change him, move things, proceed for divorce or, look for a new husband. It's a lot of work in non-contentment. And it reminds me of a story that I heard when I was back in the States a few years ago, told by a very nice Catholic priest. It has to do with the beggar boy and the priest. And the story goes something like this. I think it's in New York somewhere. And there's this beggar boy. He gets up every morning and he goes to this corner to try to sell some bagels. And there's a priest who lives not so far away from that corner. So every day he does this exercise. He runs around the blocks a few times. And he sees this boy sitting there, trying to set up his stand, very cold morning. And he's getting things ready, open up the thing. So he jogs down there first time, second time, then maybe third time around, he throws the boy 2 quarters and smiles to the boy and just waves and keeps on walking. The boy's like, okay, whatever. I thought maybe he'll come back and pick it up later once he finishes his exercise, but he never does. And this happens, he does it, I guess he sees the boy once a week or something. It happens for, a few weeks, a few months, and he never stops for his bagel. Just throws the 2 quarters, smiles, and the boy waves back. It's like, okay, whatever. And then one day, as the priest was, jogging by the boy, again, he throws 2 quarters. And the boy really stopped him. And the priest smiles and says, I bet you're wondering why I always, throw the 2 quarters to you, but I never stop for my bagels. And the boy said, no, that's not why I stopped you. I just want to tell you that today the price of bagels has gone up to 60 cents. That has to do with appreciation and contentment. We're happy and we're saying, it's 50 cents is great, but we're not content. We say, no, I want that extra down. I want more things. Happiness is getting more. And also for us to reflect, always to appreciate. Appreciation leads to peace, leads to stillness, less doing. And anything the Buddha said, anything that leads to peace, to harmony, is teaching the Dhamma. Because it leads to less doing, leads to being still, allowing the mind. And it's this kind of skills that is not only good for us to apply on a daily level, peace and harmony, to live in peace, to look for our commonality, and not to exaggerate the differences. Obviously, we are dealing, it's not to say that we are in denial that everything is one big happy world and we're all the same. We're not the same, obviously. We have our own causes and conditions. But sometimes when we do, kind of emphasize the different things that set us apart, then it leads to confrontation, it leads to divisiveness. So the practice of looking for good things in other people, what we have in common, especially the wholesome qualities that we share with each other, leads to a community, united community, who can live in peace and harmony. But also, deeper than that, it enhances, empowers our own meditation practice. Because when you learn how to live in peace in everyday life, when you sit, you also learn to make peace with whatever's happening in the mind. Whether the mind is talkative, noisy, or distracted, it's not a problem. When the Buddha sat down the Bodhi tree, and when he was enlightened, even during the time of the Buddha, he was a wonderful person with many beautiful qualities and powers, but he still lived in a world of strife. There was wars, there's famines, there's lots of kind of, not so nice things that happened during his time. And he said that, and he didn't try to set out to achieve world peace. He didn't set out to achieve a perfect place on earth, because he knew that was an impossibility. But what he did, which was more powerful, where it was more, has more influence, was that he made peace with the existing conditions, right? And that's where perfection lies. It doesn't lie in creating a perfect world out there when we get everybody to do what we want to do, to say what they should be saying. And it goes for, your partners, it goes for monks and nuns that you love and respect. Now, you don't always do what you want. And you live with any master, you will know very quickly. Yes, they have their wonderful qualities. But they can also be very trying. But that's not a bad thing. Because it points to our own our own projections into what perfection is. And I think with the teaching is that, even with the Buddha, with Ajahn Chah, I remember, Ajahn Sumedho, was telling a story. He tells often that he, in the beginning, was very inspired by Ajahn Chah. He wanted to come to live, this wonderful master, Thai, who practiced and who was, has a reputation of being enlightened. So he wants to train with Ajahn Chah, was very inspired. In the first few years it was, and then later he says, well, he's doing this wrong. He says not to eat in the afternoon, but I've seen him putting food aside. Is he eating in the afternoon? Maybe he is. Or he says, whatever, there's morning, evening chanting at 3 o'clock in the morning. And he doesn't always show up on time, So there's all these little things comes out. And one day he got so frustrated. He went to Ajahn Chah and says, Ajahn Chah, you said about all these things, but you don't do them yourself. You're full of mistakes, and your chanting is bad, and you don't show up on time, and you wear your robes sloppily, And Ajahn Chah, of course, being enlightened, just started laughing and said, yes, yes, of course. I said, of course I'm not perfect. Because if I were perfect, then you'd be looking for perfection out there. And it's not. You'd be looking for the Buddha outside of yourself. You should be looking for the Buddha inside yourself. And that's why sometimes, we pay homage to the Buddha. A lot of it, it's the historical Buddha, but a lot of it is just our own potential for awakening, our own potential to purify our own mind. We had a Waisak celebration a few weeks ago, and that's the thing I tried to kind of impress on the people come to the monastery. That the wonderful thing about the Buddha, the thing I find really amazing, really is that really rocks. It's not the fact. Okay, his enlightenment is really cool. Obviously, being enlightened, be happy forever, and kind of even, and just nothing, no unwholesome state of mind to come up. It's pretty amazing. But the other thing I find really amazing about the Buddha's life is the fact that he was a human being. He wasn't a god. He wasn't half a god, a quarter of God. He had regular parents. He had, 2 eyes, 2 ears, a nose, a mouth. And what I find so amazing about that is because the fact that by his own effort, he became enlightened as a human being. Right? So it had great implications for each and every one of us. Because he taught the Dhamma in a way that we can also become enlightened. And it's just remember that when, the Buddha is obviously a historical figure. But also, when we take refuge in the Buddha, we're also taking refuge in our own potential, inner potential, to purify our own mind, to incline it towards wholesome states and away from unwholesome states. And that comes around by first, I find, from my own practice, is gratitude and contentment. Gratitude for the hard work that's been done by, the elders in the Sangha, appreciating how much hard work Ajahn Brahm did to build up Bodhinyana Monastery, to build up a center, and to help support the nuns in Dhammasara, as well as to build up a jhana grove. And to know that's not easy. And also and like I said, to also appreciate, how much hard work Lumpur Sumedho made in terms of establishing monasteries in England, providing opportunities for the Siladharas, the nuns, to establish and to live in harmony. That was kind of revolutionary 30 years ago. I have to appreciate that as well, and not to get lost in the controversy sometimes. And with gratitude, it's a really beautiful state of mind. So instead of looking for the faults, we appreciate all the positive qualities that's gone ahead. And with that, I feel like as a monk, you're living off kind of the tailcoat, what do you call it? What's that word? The tailcoats of the Buddha, obviously, the enlightened masters, and the monks and nuns. Because a few weeks ago or something, I was traveling somewhere. And also, Wat Buddha Dhamma being a very isolated monastery, secluded. There's always an issue. People come and say, well, you only a few monks, 2 monks here. What happens if people don't come and feed you? They don't come every day. They don't. They only come on the weekends to offer the food, and then during the week, hopefully there's somebody there who is practicing, or somebody there, and they usually cook up the food for us. But it's not always a sure thing, because being a new monastery, people come and go. So some of the people say, why don't you make it easy? Why don't you guys just cook your own food, or use some money? And it's always that question that comes up, this is kind of Australia, why don't we change things? Be more kind of rational, more practical. But then, and it seems practical enough, but then I reflect, that's where I kind of relied on the barami, relied on all the work of Lumpur Sumedho and Ajahn Pasano made in the early days. When they came to England, Ajahn Brahm, there was no, obviously Buddhism was very new. But they had this faith in Ajahn Chah, faith in tradition. But said, no, we don't use money, and we're not going to use money, no matter what. We have to fast a few days, it's not a problem. So just reflect on that. There have been monasteries in the West for 25, 30 years. They've never had to use money, never had to cook for themselves. So, why should I start now? So it gives me faith. Obviously, sometimes you think, oh yeah, well, maybe someone doesn't show up. Now what do I do? It's like, oh. So there's always that worry when you're a kind of relatively young monk, thinking, it's a far place. It takes about 2.5 hours to get to Wat Buddha Dhamma. And different things happen. Sometimes they get lost or whatever along the way, so this issue comes up. You go, But knowing the fact that there are monasteries in the West and people have been practicing with the same discipline, and they've survived and thrived, gives me this faith and confidence that, I can follow along, it's no big deal. And I find that, it is a great resource to rely on. To know that I'm in the tradition that has, survived the test of time so far. And like I said, so that's why sometimes that, and you can see that you have a lot of faith in a tradition, you have a lot of gratitude, and also you receive the benefits of the practice. Then the gratitude arises naturally. Faith arises naturally. When you read the Buddha's, text, the suttas, and you listen to the Dhamma talks of the teachers, and that gives some faith and some inspiration. But that's very short-lived, because it's something, that inspiration lasts for a little bit. But until we kind of taste peace for ourselves, then those things are just more concepts. That's why I always kind of encourage people to, obviously to pay attention to what the teacher said, but also to do more on that. Respect for the teacher doesn't always, and the teaching doesn't always come down to bowing and kind of groveling around the senior monks. But the best thing you do by, in terms of showing the respect for the Buddha and all the teachers that have gone ahead of us, is actually to put the practice into every day and to realize the fruits of what they're talking about. To really practice loving kindness, to practice giving people the benefit of the doubt, to practice compassion. And as we see, once we see the benefit, that we receive the good karma of doing wholesome things, then it's no longer a theory, it's a fact, right? We don't have to rely on what other people say, what peace feels like. You have a good meditation, we know, right? So I just encourage people to kind of bring the practice into your life each and every day. The practice is just not for monks and nuns, it's something we can do. And also to encourage people, I don't know whether this is the right forum to address, but something that I guess is happening last few months, is that, whatever the external conditions outside is, just to go back to the basics. To always know that, like being an abbot and get very busy with kind of worldly activities. And sometimes we take the activities to be life. That's what life is about. And then but actually for myself, I find that actually it's only the time when we sit with ourselves and we pay attention to the present moment, one breath after another. That's where life is at. We're only really human being by being here, being in the present moment, appreciating what that feels like. Connecting, to our inner selves or inner non-selves as we're sitting here. we're moving around, we don't have mindfulness, then we're not really living. So just reflect on that. So everything else is shadow play. The pros and cons, whatever happens to the World Cup, whoever wins, whether you are for or against bhikkhuna ordination, and that comes and goes. But how is your practice? Are you suffering, and are you making efforts to decrease that suffering? Are you moving towards unity, peace, and harmony? Or are you advocating division? And just to bring it back to a practice. It's a practice of kindness, of compassion. Nothing else. The only thing, like I said, you probably already guessed that as a monk, we don't really plan for talks. Whatever comes out, comes out. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's less than desirable. But I always remember something. There was one thing nice, like I said, was kind of being back in Bodhinyana Monastery. It's the sense of kind of like a sense of family bonding with my brothers in the holy life. That, we are very different characters, as one monk said. The people that you have to be with, spend your time with in the monastery, are the same people he would, if you see him coming on the street, he would cross the street to go the other way. But being a monk, you don't have any choice. Whoever ordains with you sits to your left, and ordains, earlier sits to the right. Obviously, nothing to do with your preference. And it's a great training in that way. But also over time, being there for 8 years, we've developed something deeper than our own kind of views and opinions. We don't always agree on everything. As a matter of fact, we rarely agree on many things. But we can still talk about it. And that's why the coffee club is great. Obviously, we have, after the meal, we kind of sit around and we have coffee with each other, or tea or whatever. It's just to kind of... Sometimes some people say, and we can be quite rowdy, and some people think, what, you guys, why am I feeding you guys? The things you discuss in your coffee club, but nonsense. But being back, reflecting on the wholesome qualities of it, it's just the bonding. It doesn't matter what was said, who said what to whom, or whether you agree with, the views and opinions. The fact that it was just time just to sit there and share things. And that to me, I felt was really, really nice, just to be here, and obviously, being more of a traditionalist, I have certain views and opinions, and obviously Ajahn Brahm has different views and opinions, but we can still talk about it, and at the end of the day, agree to disagree, which is fine. It's not a problem. We're not clones of each other. We don't have to follow the party line, and that's the nice thing about being a monk who grown up in Australia. That there is, I think, the openness to allow people to be themselves, to allow differences, to allow us individuality, and also allow people to ask any questions, that they don't understand. There's no such thing, and that's why I find the training in Bodhinyana is incredibly useful in that way. There's never a question that you cannot ask regarding a monk or a nun up here. And in the end, you don't have to agree, but obviously I will express my views, whatever it's worth, and opinions about a certain subject. And you can contemplate that and work with that. And I find, just the communal harmony of being in a sangha, and just in the kind of bonding that we have was quite special. As I say, we don't have to agree. But that's okay, because our friendship is deeper than that. It's deeper than any views you might hold about anything. It's deeper where I may be. The sense that, okay, there's enough respect and trust in each other to do the right thing. That I find is immensely helpful to live in any community, to any relationship. And the reflection I had, was saying earlier, in terms of contentment. Contentment, I find, is this great, sharp diamond sword that cuts away all the craving. Because, like I said, when you're content, it leads towards stillness inextricably. And when you're not content, it's when it leads towards movement, complication, diversification, because you have to do things, manage and change. So, practice of contentment, it's like anything. It's a practice, right? Training of the mind is a practice, and that's what Buddhism is. Buddhism, I like to tell people, is not a noun. It's not something you read about. It's not something you, kind of more knowledge. It's not a concept. Buddhism is a verb, something you do. We're not Buddhist because we're born into it, we belong to a certain family or a clan or a class, or sexual orientation. No, we're Buddhist because something we do. Our intention towards harmlessness, towards peace and kindness. And it's the training that we do for our entire life. And to kind of keep that in mind, keep the reflection. Am I moving towards peace and harmony? Moving towards compassion, or am I moving away from that? And to have this mindfulness, just to reflect, sometimes not to give yourself a hard time. Because sometimes we do that, I'm a Buddhist, and I have this terrible thought, no, evil. I shouldn't. You have to tell Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Brahm, what should I do? What penance should I do? And he would say, you just go 50 strokes of the cat. And so to accept. To bring mindfulness and say, okay, these thoughts I have are unwholesome, and that's fine, because I say, okay, I'm not enlightened, so I will have greed, anger, and delusion from time to time. And to accept that from time to time. But also to allow, to use whatever training you can, to allow to let that go. To kind of not engage in it, not pushing away, but not engaging in it as well. And then steering the mind slowly towards wholesome states. Towards forgiveness, giving people the benefit of the doubt. And it's something I encourage people, to do. And see for yourself. When you do wholesome things, what does that feel like? So always have mindfulness. When you do something unwholesome, you say something mean, you hurt somebody, hurt an animal, see what that feels like. Because once the mind knows what is happiness and what is suffering, then we're inclined towards happiness automatically. It's not something we have to do so much. Only initially there is some effort to be set up, some mindfulness. When you progress along the path, build up the wholesome habits, then the mind works on its own. So just to know there's conditioning. But initially we have to create the right condition. Like the Buddha said, Buddhism can be very complicated. It can get very technical. We have 4 meters worth of suttas for you to read. But the Buddha summed it down, and there's a beautiful plaque in that, in Dhammaloka. Buddhism really boils down to, right? Avoid evil actions, to do what is good, and to purify the mind. So just reflect it over. What am I doing? Am I avoiding evil? Am I continue to do good? And to train my mind in whatever ways I can. And the fact that the Buddha, I told you, was a human being, he did that. And then, by knowing enlightened monks and nuns who became enlightened through practicing the Buddhist teaching, It gives us great faith, gives me great faith and confidence. There's something that still can be done in this day and age. Each and every one of us. Through persistence, through cultivation, mindfulness, we can purify our own mind. And just not for ourselves, for the welfare and happiness of all beings. Because we know when you're unhappy, when you're tired, grumpy, what does that happen? We're not happy. There's no way we can make anybody else happy. And that is a natural law in the mind. Sometimes we have good intention and want to, be of service, be of use to people, and make a difference in the community we live in. But we have issues to deal with. We have anger issues, greed issues, and that's going to take precedence over anybody else. So the best thing we can do for the community, best thing we can do for our partners and families and sons and daughters and children is first to purify our minds, to devote some time to meditation. As the famous philosopher said, that Madonna, it says, "Until I learn to love myself, I'm never going to love anybody else." See? She must be a Buddhist in her past life. Like I said, there was the kind of reflections I offer you for tonight. I came, like I said, to give a talk and to offer some teachings, 9-day retreat, out of gratitude to Ajahn Brahm, who obviously gave me almost perfect conditions to train my mind in the Bodhinyana Monastery for the last 8 years. But also, out of gratitude, I'd like to dedicate this also to Lumpur Sumedho and all the Thai monks, who also, where I became inspired and to ordain there. May this be a cause and conditions for peace and harmony as we move forward, and may we practice for the welfare and happiness of all beings. Okay, so that's our reflection for you tonight. Okay, any questions or comments? If I don't like the question, we're not going to broadcast it, right? No. Yes?
I'm just wondering if you can, you mentioned that you're experiencing the busy life with being the abbot of your monastery and, getting a new thing up and going, and you reflected earlier on how busy you were. In the busy life that we lead, it's so easy sitting here in this calm, peaceful environment, it all seems so obvious. I'm just wondering if there's any hints you can give us for being mindful of the things we talk about in the busy life. So often I find that I've already done the wrong thing, said the wrong thing, whatever, and I realise afterwards that, that's not the way I was supposed to react. I should be thinking this way and doing that. Perhaps in your busy time, did you find yourself in the same position, and what did you use to bring yourself back into the moment?
Yes, no, that's a very good question. And for myself anyway, because over different practice in the monastery for many years, what I did in Wat Buddha Dhamma, knowing I was very busy, was I set up very regular morning and evening chanting and meditation sessions. And then to set up, when I sit down, I set up, instead of, like I was telling you before, instead of thinking in life is what I do outside of meditation. No, I set up my mindfulness to recognize that life is what I do during my meditation. Everything else is shadow play. Yes, the toilet gets fixed, it doesn't get fixed, the roof is a leak, sometimes it has a leak, and sometimes it doesn't have a leak. Things come and go, people come and practice and they go. But basically, the most important thing for me is one breath. In breath and out breath at that moment. So I think I would recommend, if you can have the conditions, was that to have a regular practice, something to really center the mind. And then also, what you find is that, yes, when you do sit down, the mind will not be peaceful, because you've got responsibilities and the jobs and family. It will move, but that's still okay. At least you're giving yourself, whatever, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of downtime, and sometimes allowing the mind just to process whatever the day's information is. Then you will be, I think, the mind has that chance to rest. It will kind of re-energize automatically and be brighter. And then, yes, you may be making a mistake, but at least the fact that you're recognizing after the fact that you made a mistake, that will program the mind. Okay, next time this situation, I will try to steer away from this unwholesome state of mind. I will react more with kindness, with forgiveness, instead of reacting from anger or jealousy or hurt. But also to know that practice is gradual. And just to allow yourself the time just to progress and not to expect to get results very quickly. Yeah, there's a lady, like I said, we were teaching on Armadale a few years ago, and she was a regular attendant of every Tuesday night. We have this Armadale session, and she comes almost every Tuesday. And then one day we had a sharing session, and she was saying that she comes very regularly, but not because her meditation was very peaceful or anything. She said there was not. When she sat down, it was all over the place, kind of digesting the day's events. She had a teenage daughter that, obviously kept her on her toes most of the time. And she said that, so her mind was quite busy when she sat down. But she kept coming because she noticed that outside of her meditation, that she was quite, her relationship with the people around her changed over time, the last 6 months. That she didn't lose her temper as quick as she did before. And she didn't carry around the negativity for so long. So even though the mind was, the meditation wasn't peaceful, obviously it had a positive effect on her life. And just to notice that as well, and to appreciate that. Yeah. Is that helpful?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good.
I do notice that, it does get easier. You don't carry the unwholesome states of mind around for so long, But, for as long as you practice, it's still, the busier you get, the further away it seems something like that. So that's helpful. Thank you.
Right. Okay, very good. Any questions or comments? Complaints? You have to go to Dennis. Yes? Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think contentment cuts craving in the sense that you said you have a house. If you said, oh, this house is getting small, it's too old, it's too rickety, then you've got to look around how to fix it, or have to work harder to buy a bigger house. So by being happy with your smaller house or your not so new house, it creates less work, right? So it cuts away the doing more thing and getting more. So you're happy with your job. So you trying to look at the positive things. So contentment to have contentment, you have to constantly focus on the positive things in life, the positive in the situation, in yourself, in another person. Then you grow in contentment, and when you're content, then you don't want anything else. That's what the true meaning of contentment is. You say, this house is good enough, but that's not true contentment. So you try to focus on more and more contentment. And then, like I said, and basically, the more you practice, then whatever you have in front of you is good enough because you have contentment. And it isn't good enough, then it leads to doing more things. You have to change it, you have to make it better. So it leads to more work, more distractions. So that's why I said contentment leads to stillness, and it cuts craving. Because craving always leads to more doing. So it's just kind of sit down one day and say, am I doing more or less than a month ago? Just to check how much, contentment you have or how much craving there's in the mind. Yeah, does that make sense? Okay. Thanks.
That helps you abandon the craving.
That's right. You can let it go and it's going to make peace with it.